All right, everyone, we will go ahead and get started. Thanks for being here this morning. Robert, why are you here this morning?
I want to be prepared when the objections do come, and make sure that I have accurate information to handle the objections.
Okay, so we want to be skilled on how we handle those objections. Remember the last time we spoke, handling objections is great, but what is our ultimate goal? Eliminate them. Correct. Because generally, a seller is going to have a handful of objections, buyer is going to have a handful of objections. And if I'm skilled enough, is it possible for me to work those concerns into my conversation and completely eliminate them? Yes, it is. Remember, one of the things we spoke about last time was a lot of times agents end up putting themselves in a position where they create their own objections based on what we've said or haven't said or how we say it. So we need to be skilled with that. So after last class, who all went in and created at least one script in their objection skill set journal? Anybody? Sarah? Good job. Extra 5 points for Sarah. Points mean nothing, but you got 5 of them, okay? Because remember, it's only helpful if you take the information that you hear and at least put it somewhere, because if it's just written down in those notes, that's great. But half the time, like, where did I even put that packet? Like, where was that at? That objection skill set journal, you can't lose it. It's in your drive, it's in the folder. All you have to do is every time you hear a new objection, jump in there and add it and throw some handlers in there. So now you actually have something to practice from. Because if you want to get skilled and you want to win and you want to set yourself apart from your competition, it's in the way we speak, correct? We speak differently than typical agents, and that starts with us learning and then practicing what we're going to say when these things come up. Because I hear different things in phone calls and things like that, and I'm hearing it and I'm kind of like, I don't think that agent practiced very much. Because there's some stuttering and some stammering, and you can tell they're trying to come up with something to say. And it's like, I'm a professional. It's pretty rare that something should come up that I'm like not prepared for. Would you agree?
Yes.
Yeah, because I mean, this is what I do. I do this all the time. If I'm actively working with people, I'm going to hear these things. So it's very rare that I should get caught off guard. That's the honest truth. Every once in a while, even when I was in the field, I'll someone would come up and I'd be like, man, that's a really good question. That's never come up before. And I could very easily say, that's a great question. I'll get back with you. What's your next question? I'm just going to move on from that. I'm not going to sit there and stammer around and try to pull something out of thin air. So I was like, I'm not prepared for that one. I'm not going to answer that right now. What's your next one? I can move on. But the big one, the basics one, we should have those down. So when somebody asks a question, I'm not trying to go back in the recesses of my mind and remember, man, what was said 3 months ago that I heard that I really like. It's like, no, it's right there on my tool belt because I heard it. I put it in my objection skill set journal and I practiced it. I practice and practice and practice. Hi, Michelle. Okay. All right. Well, that's that. Carrie, why are you here today?
I'm trying to learn as much as I can.
Okay, I'll give you that. So if you guys don't know Carrie, this is Carrie. She is one of our new agents. She's been with us a little while, but she worked full time. So she kind of did some training on the weekends and things like that. And she is now pulled the plug and went full time. So we welcome you to the office. And you guys may not know Jerome. So Jerome is another one of our new agents. Transferring from another brokerage, correct? Yeah, so welcome. We're happy to have you. So I'll give both of you all a pass on the question today, right? You're here just in learning. Angela?
Pass, no kidding.
Yeah, that's what I was.
You evolved.
That was good though. Good try.
Thank you. No, I'm here so I want to fine tune my skills and my scripts, but.
Using your objection skill set.
Yeah.
Here's the beautiful thing about the systems, and maybe we can talk about this in a sales meeting, right? Anytime you go, has anybody ever been to a real estate conference? Yeah. Have you ever come away with an entire book full of notes?
Yes.
You ever done that? And how many of those did you put into practice? 0. Okay, yeah, 0 or very few, right? What ends up happening, you come away from the conference, you're super excited, you're like, wow, this is awesome. And then you get back to business and you can settle right back into that same rut. Just doing what I was doing before I went. The point of our systems are, if you go to a conference, remember, I always tell you, I want you to take away 1 or 2 key things, that's it. If you come away with 2 or maybe 3 key items that can impact your business, make you more efficient, make you better at what you do, that is a win. It's worth paying several $1,000s to go to a conference and come away with that. However, if all it is ends up being scribbles on a page, and I set it aside 6 months later, I find it like, wow, these were really good ideas at the time, but I don't even quite remember what they were. It's pointless, okay? We have systems to where if you go to a conference and you hear a good script, should you not immediately, can you get it from your phone, pull up your folder, add that script in, that handler? Yes. Now, guess what? The rest of the conference doesn't matter. I came away with that, and that's a win. What if you learned something that would make your ultimate fan experience better? I'm sitting there listening to a panel and somebody up there, or I'm in a class and somebody says something, I'm like, I need to do that. What do I do with that? We make it as easy as possible. What do we do with that?
Then your business plan or your listing presentation, your steps.
Okay, there you go, steps, my seller process.
Yeah.
Buyer you could literally be sitting, I'm proud of you guys. You could be sitting there in a class, something triggers in your mind, and you're like, if I did that, it would make my buyer or seller's experience even better. I'm gonna grab my phone, go to my drive, pull up my seller process, add a line, and put it in there. And now it is permanently in my buyer and seller process. And if I walk away with nothing else from the conference, that's a win. So I can make my process better, I can make a script better. What if somebody presents some kind of action item and my mind is blown? I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. I should be doing that to help generate some more business. Where do I put it? My agile, perfect. I'm sitting there in the room and I'm like, oh, that's really good. Pull it up, go to the Google Drive, go to my agile, make this something for my SOI, a specific touch I've never heard before. And I'm like, I love that. Go to my SOI pillar, add it. And now it's permanently there. See how easy that is to do? And yet how often do we slack on it? All the time. So we're trying to make it as easy for you as you can. You guys can be constantly tweaking and just making these things better. I promise we're gonna start the class here in just a moment. I agree. All right, Sarah.
We're just waiting on Bree to show up.
Yes, now Bree's here, we can
Now
begin.
we're starting.
I've said this before, but building my confidence for the commissions that we charge. And each class I'm in, I'm reminded of all the little things that go into it. I know we have our checklists and stuff, but it's still being here all the time.
Okay, very good. Because if they're not hiring you, there's a very high probability they're gonna hire a mediocre agent, correct? Yes.
I can say kind of based off what you were just saying.
Yeah.
I usually take notes in the packet and I don't go back to it. So last time I had my skill set journal up and I had 7 scripts in from last class, and I wouldn't have gone back and remembered what we said at the time of class.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would have no problem. And you guys remember how to hyperlink your scripts in, because that's the big thing, is to make sure that you have your objection, and then you have several as many handlers as you want. But each one of those is hyperlinked to a separate Google document, right? So you can just hover over it and you can script practice very, very quickly. Running through the scripts. Okay? If anybody doesn't know how to do that, see me or see somebody that does it, because I'm telling you, it makes a huge difference. So use the tools that we have. Okay? Ryan.
I think I'm today, well, not just today, but overall, I'm here to hear some of the variations to the objections, because, somebody will present an objection, but they'll word it maybe a little differently than what it would be like, say, in the packet.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same objection, and so I'm looking to be able to connect those two, hear those variations and connect it to another, objection.
Okay.
Maybe in the packet that somebody else has got here before.
Okay. Yeah, so what if somebody asks us an objection, is there anything wrong with me asking clarifying questions? Because I think I know what they're really getting at, but is there any reason I can't ask them to kind of clarify? Or what do you mean by that? What is the main concern based off of that you brought up? And maybe by something else they say, then it triggers in my mind a little, okay, yeah, for sure, this is what they're concerned. Nothing wrong with that at all, okay? All right, who has it with Michelle?
But, the most part it's to learn, but also, I'm here. To know what they.
Okay, become more confident. Remember, sitting in the class is great, but then if I don't take it out and spar with it, study it, practice it, take action, reinforce it, won't help me. Okay? Because I've heard some people, like I said, I'm not picking on anybody, but I've heard times where I've specifically taught things. And I've heard people on the phone, and I'm like, where did that come from? That did not come out of my mouth, I promise you that. Or I've heard agents, or stuff reported on open houses. Cameras at open houses, and I'm like, that was never taught in one of our classes, ever. Okay, so practice, 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 okay? Bree, why are you here?
Just to be reminded, always, just getting into those moments where you're in front of a customer and you go blank or you're under pressure and just wanna eliminate that and be comfortable. So just a remind and, work with everything.
So again, your practice and all that preparation that's done off the court is what matters. Because whenever you get under the spotlights and you're right in front of that person, it's very easy for your mind to just go.
Yep.
But if I'm prepared, I can walk in confident enough to where I can trust anyone. Okay, well, I'll try to work in as many of those as I can for the class today. Last time we finished up speaking, so it was on page 9. And I think we're moving into either, was it the bottom of page 9? We start actually.
We stopped at the bottom of page 1.
Okay, so we had that seller wants to list above competition. Okay, is this a common problem?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Why do most sellers want to do that? Okay, just to see, you ever heard that? I just want to see if we can get it. So basically what they're saying is, I acknowledge everything you just said is true about the price of my home. However, I want to throw all that out the window and I just want to see. That's what they're saying all the time, right? Yeah. See, is that against your, oh, Sarah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, last 2 listings, they both said, I wanna list at X because I know I won't get that, so. Then you really go, there's room to negotiate.
Yeah, I got that.
Stereotype of negotiation, you always start high.
Yeah. Okay. So how do I handle that? So we'll get back to this one. How do I handle that?
I ran into that as well on my only listing, that she wanted to go $7,085 to $7,000 over, and I was like, there's a better chance that if you list it right where you anticipate the market to sell, you're going in 175, that's where it should sell. I was like, if there's multiple offers, if there's a high interest, I was like, let the buyer drive that price. I was like, so then that way you see exactly, you can head it off at the beginning instead of sitting 2 weeks down the road. And I would just presented multiple, different market activity.
Okay.
Or habits.
Okay. I agree with that. What are some other thoughts on that? What do I really need to hone in on? And Robert hit on it. So when I go before a seller, generally during my conversation, we talked about this maybe in pricing or conversion, I can't remember which class, but there's kind of 3 different strategies when I bring a house to market, correct? Remember what those are? When we talked, there's 3 strategies. 1 or 2 of those are pretty good. One of them we don't necessarily recommend. What are they?
Diamond in a rut. Something in a rut.
Diamond in a what?
In a rut.
In a rut? I like that. Diamond in a rut, yeah, diamond in a rut, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. What does that mean? What does that mean? If I'm talking to a seller, I say, okay, yeah, here's one, we call it a diamond in a rough, right? What is that? What strategy is that? It's exactly what they're talking about right here. I just want to put it out there and see if I can find that buyer that's the diamond in the rough. That's willing to pay me the extra $30,000 for my house. Is that a good strategy? No. It's not a good strategy. What are the other two strategies?
Frenzy.
A frenzy means I'm going right below, correct? Because in this market, if it's a good house, priced right below, what generally tends to happen,
Dress.
prices push. And then we have that right at that entry level price. So those are the three strategies the seller could choose from. And statistically, what we know is a house that chooses that diamond in the rough, right? What ends up happening to them? And they end up going down. So I need to be confident enough whenever I speak to a seller to say, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, however, there's three pricing strategies and you need to understand and be able to explain to them what's happening in the market. Because what is happening in our market right now, prices or houses that are priced appropriately are selling. They're selling quickly, if they've been prepared properly, they're exposed properly, they're priced appropriately, or priced slightly below. They sell, and then what happens is many times they're getting multiple offers that's pushing them up well above where the price should be, and they might even be surpassing that diamond in the rough. Is there some risk with that? Sure. But based on your experience as an agent, you should be able to tell them, I'm pretty confident in this. This is what the comps are showing, and you need to be able to bring examples with you. Several of the latest ones have been within the last 30 days. I know one or two over on the Kansas side, one within 48 hours had, was it 60 showings and 40 offers? There was another one in 24 hours, they had 20 offers. So I need to be able to speak to that, and as a full-time realtor, like I know what's going on. I know why it's happening. I know what our inventory levels are. So I need to be able to bring that to a seller and say, you want to list above the competition, well, here's the dangers of that. Because if you're the highest in a neighbor, you're gonna help them sell their houses. Is that really what you want to do? What are some other thoughts on that? I want to list more than any other house in the neighborhood.
The next objection I got after that was, like, having that conversation was, well, we're fine leaving it on the market for a month, we're in the run.
Yeah. And I've had that too. So how do we address that?
Well, your home's gonna get stale then, people are gonna
That's
wonder
it.
why it's sitting
Yep.
there.
Yep, yep.
So-
And what I would tell them is, oh, go ahead, sir.
Oh, they just, then their offers, they offer less, they ask for closing costs, they ask for a bunch of stuff during inspection, and then it's like, at what point are you at with your net proceeds then?
Yeah. So what I need to be able to do with them is say, I can go back to my pricing tools and I'm gonna look at my average days on market. Okay, like this is the average days on market for our neighborhood. If we go beyond that, we're gonna be stale. All right, and if we're stale, I can guarantee you that's what's gonna happen. A buyer's gonna come in, offer us less, beat us up on inspection, all of that stuff is going to happen. So if you're telling me your desired time frame is actually to sit there for 60 days, I'm gonna make a recommendation, let's do coming soon. Let's just go coming soon, let's get closer to that desired range and then list it. Because I can guarantee you statistically, what's gonna happen is if we try your strategy, you're gonna walk away with less money.
And then,
Now, I guess if you're okay with less money, then we can do that.
bringing up coming soon, we don't have that program anymore, we've been speaking on MLS.
Yeah.
Or the MLS.
Yep, nonetheless. Because I can still market the living daylights out of it on social media and everywhere that I want. Okay, so yeah, just because we don't have cases coming soon, does not mean we don't do nothing soon. Right? And they're just gonna have to think through that. Because what's gonna happen is they're gonna sit on the market and they're gonna see all the competition selling. And they're gonna, most of them end up kind of regretting that decision. They're like, we shouldn't have done that, because then they end up dropping. And all current buyers have already written their house off, and it's off the table.
Yeah, something's wrong with it, that's why they're not,
Yep. Yep, that's correct. Because then, we can have the conversations of the other things we can leverage, which is what in its present condition, the appraisal shortfalls, all of that stuff. And again, all we can do is we can present the case. Because remember, pricing is all about what? What is the word that we say? What do I always say to the seller? Pricing is about what? Oh, wait.
The market value.
Market value, yeah. Proof, okay, justification. That should be in your repertoire of verbiage, right? It's all about justification, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. I have to be able to justify the price we're putting on this to who? To buyers, to the buyer's agents, to the lenders, to the appraisers, to the underwriters, and basically what you're wanting me to do is list this at a price that's unjustifiable. So why are we doing that? Okay? And the longer you do this, the more confident you'll get in having those conversations. Because early on, it's hard because in the back of your mind, you're kind of thinking like, well, I really would like this listing. And maybe there's a buyer out there that's gonna, there's not a buyer that's gonna overpay. They just don't. Unless they're represented by a terrible agent giving them terrible advice. Because buyers don't just all of a sudden hear that, oh, you need an extra 40,000, well, let me write you a check. Like, they just don't do that, right? It's absurd. And then you could even ask them, so then when it's time for you to go buy your next house, are you gonna be okay with paying an extra 40,000 for a house? Or are you gonna look at all the competition and use that to judge whether or not you're gonna buy? Okay, so there's different ways that you can approach that. So here's this script that they give us in Momentum. So take a second, read that, and somebody, remember, when we're scripting, I don't want you memorizing anything. I want you internalizing the key components of it. You internalize the key components, because there's certain things, you may hear me with 10 different sellers, and I'll say it a little bit different with each one. There could be some difference in how I say it, but the key concepts are always going to be the same. Okay? So read that for a second, and somebody take a stab at it. Remember, we already established what their timing need was, hopefully, during our conversation with them. So how would you present this script? There you go, Ryan. Okay.
Yeah, we can certainly list high, but keep in mind that that's gonna put us at the high end of that of our competition. When we're at that high end, just looking at statistically, you can expect to be on that market for at least a month and a half, if not more. You know, what you told me in that conversation about timing, I don't see that as acceptable. You agree?
Wow, that's good. Yeah. Ryan, you convinced me. That's a problem. Yeah, it's just that simple, but that comes down to the power of some of the conversation I've had with them, like, what is their motivation? When do they need to get moved? Okay? Because a lot of people, if they're ready to list their house, they may say, well, we're okay with it sitting for a couple months. But I promise you, once they list it and they've been on for 2 weeks, they're gonna be blowing up your phone like, oh, what's happening? Yeah, where's my offer? I don't have a buyer. I'm like, well, remember that conversation that we had? That's the truth of it.
Then you get the, you never said that.
You did. Now, you guys remember how we talked about otter.ai? Has anybody got that yet?
What's that?
Otter.ai, I put out a big thing from one of the classes, because Shayla recorded a class on it and gave out that bullet point description of everything, and I think I might have even talked about it in the sales meeting. I know I did actually, or classes. You can have that, it can be sitting there with you during your appointment. You just let them know, hey, I've got my computer here, it's gonna be recording the conversation, it's gonna send us a bullet point summary of everything we discussed today. Because everything we discuss on a listing appointment, is it not different generally?
Yeah.
Everything's gonna be very specific, unique to the house, to the seller. Well, to that point, you never said that, it's like, well, if I have Otter sitting there listening, it's going to give me the entire conversation in summary form, bullet points. And I can send that to them afterwards, say, hey, here's, make sure you review it, okay, make sure it's all correct. And then you're gonna send that to them, and I'll save a copy in the dot loop, and here's your copy, here's everything we talked about. Very specific to your house, to your, is that not cool?
What's it called?
Otter.ai. Yeah.
OTTER.
It'll literally sit there and we could turn it on every class we do and it will listen to everything. And then give a summary, a synopsis with all the bullet points of, here's everything we did. Here's action items, right? It does all that for you. So there's lots of tools that we can use to overcome that. We never said that. I go back to page 3, subsection B, and it's like, there it is right there. Okay, so just an idea, just a potential tool. But Ryan, good job with that. Here's one, seller wants to disregard competition. How are we gonna address that? Seller wants to disregard the competition. You ever had that where you came in and maybe you had your pricing tools and, or even worse, like you show up and a seller wants to use the next neighborhood over to justify their price? You ever had that? You will. They're like, well, 2 streets away, this house sold for this, and you're like, that's a totally different neighborhood. The competition I need to be looking at is what truly like-kind homes. That is, or you go to like Brookside or Waldo, and they got one of the little Hobbit bungalows, and they're like, yeah, but this 2-story, right, 2 houses down sold for this. It's like, wait a second. Like, we gotta start comparing like kinds here, okay? So they're saying, I don't care what the competition says, I don't care what other people are listed for in my neighborhood, how am I gonna handle that? Because I just clearly showed them 3 active properties in their neighborhood at a specific price.
Turn into a situation where it's kind of like a reasonable seller.
Which we will get to, yes, yes. All right, so based off of our script, how would you put this into your language or your verbiage? Remember, I'm ending this with a question because I do that, same as the way Ryan did, I'm doing that because I'm putting it back on them. I'm forcing them to justify or explain why it is that they're wanting to do this. So this script is pretty simple. Hey, you know, based on the competition that I just showed you, right? There appears to be, now, do we have months of inventory right now? We don't, but we have to acknowledge it, right? But based on what I've seen, there's already 3 houses on the market right now that are very similar to yours. We went through and we've looked at amenities, upgrades, and everything, and they are very similar to yours. If we price above them, what's gonna happen? I can't guarantee you that we're gonna get this sold in your desired time frame that you told me you wanted. So if a buyer is looking at those other 3 houses and they come look at yours, what is it about your house that would make that buyer agree to pay more? And let them see what they say. Because that's gonna tell you a lot whether it's an unreasonable seller or they just hadn't thought through it fully yet. Because now they're on the defensive, they have to explain why a buyer in their right mind would show up to their house and be willing to pay more than the one 2 streets over that's literally the exact same house. Okay. Oh, I've interviewed several agents, and one of the agents told me this is the wrong time of year to sell. You guys ever heard that? This is the wrong time of year to sell. Is there a wrong time you do what, Sarah?
Like family and Facebook.
No. All the family experts, the Facebook PhDs, yes. Is there a wrong time of year to sell?
No.
No, we need to dispel that myth. There's no wrong time to sell. Because homes sell for 2 reasons, correct? Are one of those reasons time of the year? No, absolutely not. They sell for what 2 reasons? Price and exposure. Price and it's always price and exposure. Price means did I price it right? Exposure is not just putting it on MLS, because on MLS it will syndicate out. RE/MAX syndicates a 250,000 website. So we know that part of the exposure is good, but the other part of exposure I need to think about is what do my photos look like? Did I spend the time to properly prep the house? Is it staged appropriately? Did I leave it vacant? I'm sorry, vacant homes are our nemesis. We don't like vacant homes, okay? So did I do my job to get it ready? Does it look good? When it shows, does it smell good? Is it nice? Is it, all of that stuff matters, okay? That's why homes sell not because they've entered the wrong time of year. Now, is real estate cyclical? Are there certain times of year, is there a cycle to real estate that we see? We have to acknowledge that. Yeah, there is. And what is the cycle that we see generally?
March to August is hot.
Okay, so we'll hit a spring market. We can acknowledge that. Yeah, in the spring market, generally, we do see more houses hit the market, right? But for a seller, is that good or bad? Depends. Yeah, it depends, but there is going to be more competition. Is there potentially a larger buyer pool? Possibly. School years are ending, buyers are looking to get into something, right, before the next school year starts. Sure, we recognize that those trends are in fact true. Okay? But that has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that there's a better time of year to buy or sell. That's just a fair statement. Okay? So if another agent came in and said it's the wrong time of year to list, how do we handle that? Okay. All right. So as Shayla would say, how do we say that nicer? Because that's what we're thinking in the back of their mind, like, hey, that agent's an idiot, I'll give you that, right? And part of me saying, like, you're on a listing appointment, trying to get a listing, and you're talking yourself out of the listing by saying, you shouldn't be listing your house. Now, is there a time that I might have to talk somebody out of listing? Yes. What is the reason for that? Financial. It's gonna be financial. I've sat down with some sellers before, they wanted to sell, they tell me what their plan is, what they need to accomplish that, how much money is gonna be necessary to get into this next house. And I'm sitting there running the math and I'm like, this ain't gonna work, guys. Like, there's no way. You do not have even close to enough equity. So do you have enough cash to make, they're like, no, we don't have any money. Let's tap the brakes a little bit here and let's reconvene maybe. You know, here's a plan for you to start saving up some money. Let's get some more equity built up. Let's get some more appreciation on your property. Let's revisit it at a later time. And people appreciate that. They're like, hey, thanks for being honest. You could have just taken the listing and, you know, I'd have been out in the cold, written an apartment, but you were honest. So that would be the time we might talk somebody out, but we're not gonna talk about this.
So many sellers, I mean, I always hear that, you know, the winter time is like the worst time to sell, you shouldn't list. And my thing is, I always go back, it's like, that's the best time to sell, because a lot of people think that, so you can either be in competition with everybody else in the spring, or put yours on now, and put the diamond in the rough. You're the unicorn.
Yeah, unicorn. And I'm okay with that. Yeah, I'm okay with that. All right, what else?
I would ask them where they got that information from and then let them explain that and then that.
Okay.
That, from my experience and training on price and exposure to sell the home. Also, you do have a lot more property coming to the market in the springtime with more competition, whereas in the winter, you have more serious buyers.
Okay. I'm good with that. I think the big thing is kind of going back to, you kind of went to your experience and training. I'm good with that. I like that, but I really like here that we always put it off on the research, right? Always try to put it off on research. Just like when you walk in and it's that puke green paint and they love it. And you're like, oh man, you never say, hey, I hate the paint. You just say, hey, I know you love this color. I don't mind it at all. However, research shows that, you know, 85% of buyers are going to want what? A neutral palette, you know, maybe some of the grays or beiges even. So, you know, you always make research out to be the bad guy. Okay, based off statistics, off of research, my research shows that homes sell throughout the year. And I'm a full-time realtor and I sell houses every month of the year, right? That's not a true statement. So therefore, the only logical conclusion I can come to, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, is that other agent was simply misinformed. So guess what? I just knocked that other agent down a peg without being rude at all. I'm just like, and so I'm like, they're an idiot. That's what I've said, but I've said it very nicely. They're just misinformed, okay? Because I clearly have research, and if they want a question, I'd say, I'll be more than happy to bring you all the market activity for your neighborhood for the entire year. Would that be helpful to you? And you'll be able to show them exactly how many homes have been listed per month how many sold per month, and I promise you, you will see houses selling every time of the year. So we dispel that, okay? Yes, go ahead.
Maybe this wouldn't apply, but, can you remind me how we calculate supply or, yeah. Yeah, like if there's 2 months supply, how do we get to that number? Is that based off both buyers and sellers in the market?
Yeah, so basically what you're talking about is an absorption rate, right? And there's a formula for it. What I'll do is I will send you guys the formula after class. Just so you can do that. But the easiest thing to do for me is just using Casey Market as a whole and using that number. When I'm just having a conversation. Now, if they want to get very specific, that's when I go to that very specific absorption rate. Okay, number of houses listed versus number, go ahead.
Okay.
You could even just go out days on market too. It's like, hey, our average days on market is 52. Yeah, 52, yeah. But even for that neighborhood, I could look and I say, well, actually days on market, meaning our supply lasts 14 days. In this neighborhood.
I guess, so if it's taking into account listings and going under contract to your buyers. That,
It takes into account how many listings enter the market and how many successfully.
is that, it hasn't changed a whole lot. Has it, like throughout the year? Hasn't it
I see what
been-
you're saying. You're saying like factoring it at different times of the year so you
Yeah.
can compare them. That's a
I
good
feel like
idea.
they're in a pretty
Yeah.
recent.
Yeah.
Doesn't that kind of show, kind of what we're saying, just on more.
Yeah,
Not-
that would take, you have to run several metrics on
It's
it.
okay. I was-
But to your point, yes. I think you could do that. You could extrapolate.
And not that much.
Yeah, but I think you probably could. It'd be interesting to actually sit down and do that. Like a month over month type absorption rate to see like which months. I'd have to think on that for a minute. But I think you could do that. All right, anything else on that? All right, I feel like we've kind of already covered some of this, right? So we're comfortable with that, they're wanting to start too high. And the importance of bringing it back to a financial consequence. Because that could be pretty powerful to them. So it says, as you can see, when reducing price, you run the risk of leaving X number of dollars, right? On the table and staying on the market for X number of days longer. Based on what you shared with me earlier, both would be a direct violation of your needs. That's kind of some stark language there, but they need to understand that. You told me this and this, now you said you want to do this strategy. So if we do that, there's a financial risk, there's a timing risk. Based off what you told me initially, we're gonna violate both of those. Are you okay with that? Is that acceptable to you? And most likely they're gonna be like, maybe I shouldn't do that. Because ultimately, we want somebody that we work with to trust us. Do we agree? We want to be a team. We're the coach, as we talked about before. We want them to trust us. And they're already kind of showing me they're pushing back on my experience, my data, etc. Bottom line dialogue. This is where we come to a moment of truth. We've done everything that we can. We've led them down that path of self-discovery through our pricing tools. We've tackled their objections, their desire to list too high, and they're still saying, no, I want to list through this. What do we do?
Well, we either walk away,
Or let them experience the.
yeah, or, I mean, just that, to me, I think it would depend on how much money they're wanting to go.
Okay, I agree with that.
If it's a stupid amount, then yeah,
Okay.
it's just better like, I just don't feel like I would be the person for you.
Okay.
Or if it's not, an unreasonable amount, try it, and then, I think like I said last time, and then just set the expectation that, if we don't have an offer or, what the feedback is in 2 weeks, then we need to start lowering it, and we're gonna do it in $5,000 increments if not more.
Okay. Okay, so we could present that to them and see if they're agreeable. And I would agree, there's a difference between them wanting to be 5,000 over and then wanting to be 35,000 over.
Yeah.
There is a difference in them. All right. And in this market that we've been in the last few years, there were listings that I never would have taken, that I see people taking, and the dang things sell at those prices. I remember me and another agent, he wasn't on our team, but we did the CMA, we looked at everything, it's like, yeah, I think like that's the maximum price, he did get the listing, somebody wanted to list it like 40,000 over, dang thing sold. And he was like, that's it, I'm taking every listing. Well, we still gotta be careful, it's crazy, okay? So here's some dialogue for this, who wants to take a stab at this one? So the main premise behind this one, I'll just throw it out here is, remember, when I'm leading them down self-discovery, I'm letting them tell me, because remember the question is based on everything that I've shown you here today, what do you feel is the most appropriate price entry point of your home? I didn't tell them anything. I led them down the path, and I said, everything that I've showed you, all the comparable homes, these are the solds, here's your actives, based on everything you see here, what should we list your house for? And hopefully they come right in where I was leading them. Let's say they came in higher, so I have to go through some of that dialogue. Now we're to the bottom line. And you can use kind of whatever verbiage you want. But I'm gonna finally come down to this. The absolute highest I would feel comfortable listing the home for is this. I am now giving you my number. Because prior to this, you gave me the number, we kind of went back and forth, I'll let you know, I feel like it's a little high now to this is the bottom line. The absolute max for me to believe that this is a win-win, remember, because we believe in win-win, is X. And then the question, is this agreeable to you? So I've kind of drawn a little bit of a line in the sand there. Okay, this is it, this is my max. Are you gonna be in agreement or not? And if you're gonna do this, this needs to be that walk away point. I'll give them a little bit like I really feel like 250s where we need to be, but 265, that's it. 265 is what I'll list it for. That is my walk away number. If they say, nope, 280, I'm not the agent for you. It's not doing you any good. It's not doing me any good because I honestly do not believe I can sell this house for what you're asking. Therefore, it's not a win-win relationship. It's not a win for the seller. Why? Because they're not going to get the house sold. Not going to happen. It's not a win for me because now I'm stuck there with this listing that I'm paying to market, that I'm working hard for. I'm doing my updates every week. That ulcer grows every Friday as I have to talk to them, right? Because it's not selling. They're starting to be frustrated. I'm like, and then somehow it all gets turned back on me. And I'm like, wait a minute, I didn't do this to begin with. Okay. So I have to have a walk away. And I've not done that before. And people are shocked whenever you say, look, I'm not gonna take the listing. They're like, oh, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm just not your guy. Right? Like, this is not something I don't believe that this is gonna be a productive relationship. Therefore, I'm gonna just recuse myself and I'll just go on my way. Remember, I did that one time. They listed with another agent, and that specific agent, I looked them up, sells 50% of their listings, by the way. So you need to know those numbers. You know, what's your percentage of homes that you sell? That house sat for 6 months, and what happened? Expired. I'm like, man, I'm glad that wasn't me, because I would have had that exact same result. All right. If yes, we verify that everything meets their needs, correct? And then we need to ask them one question. Has anybody ever asked this? How will you feel if your home sells tomorrow? Because what happens is sellers, especially in a crazy market, they'll list it and they'll get an offer first day, second day. What is the thought that starts to creep into their mind? I underpriced it. They immediately want to come back and say, oh, I could have got more. I could have got more. So remember how we talked about eliminating objections? This is the perfect way to eliminate that one. So first off, what I would tell sellers in this market right now is the market doesn't lie. Right now, well, really any market, but for sure, right now, underpricing is not a thing. The market doesn't lie, and if you go in under, the market's gonna correct it, I promise you. Because if you're under, you're gonna have buyers competing for it, and they're gonna push it back up to the market value. The market value is what? What buyers are willing to pay. The market's going to correct it. So sellers say, well, I'm really worried about leaving money on the table. No, based on everything we said, we know what the value is historically, because buyers have said yes. For the same house that you have, same square footage, similar finishing, this is what they're saying yes to. We have every reason to believe this price is what we're going to get. Fair enough. So then we either go right at that price or we go right below that price. And if we do that, should I not expect the house to sell?
Yeah, like Mr. Seller, I mean, it's because of my expertise and my pricing tools that we hit the market
Yeah.
just right at the number we needed.
Yeah. 100%. So deal with this one up front. Remove that idea in the back of their minds that there's a possibility they're gonna leave money on the table. So ask that question. Okay, and this was finishing up, if sellers say, no, I'm not good with your bottom line price, here's some dialogue for you to potentially walk away. Okay, then you'll notice again, they hit on that win-win and your ability to explain it. Okay? What page?
Halfway through,
Okay, so here's some more dialogue. This is again for those stubborn sellers. Okay, if you get those, I want you guys to study on those and work on those. All right, big house, small house. We kind of already talked about that, but what is that saying? You might have even seen those. We used to have a page in our packet that had the big house, small house argument on it. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that before. It usually would show like several rows of houses and a bunch same size, one has a big house, same size, small house, row all the same houses. Anybody familiar with this one at all? Okay, this one's been around for a while, the big house, small house, okay? So what is it saying? And this one again comes back to pricing. Okay,
Mr. and Mrs. Seller, with putting your house at the top of the range, you're eliminating buyers that could possibly afford this house and, eliminating your pool.
okay. That I'll go with that. And very specific to this script, and actually Sarah hit on this one earlier, this is where they're wanting to start high, come down. Okay, what is the verbiage for that? All right, so let me, I'll help you out with this. All right, so if I'm sitting there with the seller. And maybe I even need to bring my computer or pull it up on my phone, and I've shown them all the comps in their neighborhood that have sold. At this price point where they should be. And they're saying, no, I want to price at X. So what that means is picture on the graph, the first row of houses, they're all the same size, then I have a big house. In there, and then all the same size, okay, meaning these are all the same, price the same, then I have a big house. What it's saying is a buyer, if you price 30,000 over, a buyer is no longer going to compare your house to those other houses on your street. They're going to start comparing your house to the neighborhood next door because you're priced the same as those. Does that make sense? So then I need to be able to show them, okay, so you want to price at 380. Let me show you the other houses available or that have sold at 380, and let's see how your house matches up. And they're gonna see that, they're gonna say, wow, my house isn't as nice as those, it isn't as new, it isn't as upgraded, it isn't as big, whatever the case may be. So then I'm showing them the whole big house versus little house argument, okay? What I need to do is my house needs to be priced in accordance with all the same size houses. Okay, meaning the buyers are all gonna look at the same size houses and then make their comparisons from there. Your other option is go with the little house one, and all the houses on the street are priced this, and you have the little house. Meaning you have the lower price. So now all the buyers look at all these houses, come to yours and say, that is the best value. I want that one. I'm gonna offer on that one, and then I get 10 buyers to do that. And now my chance of actually pushing my value go up. So that's big house versus small house. If you wanna price it as a big house, show them what big houses really look like. They're gonna be like, okay, yeah, I can't compete with that. Why would a house go over to? Can't think of the neighborhood that's next to a small, doesn't matter. Why would they go to this neighborhood and then come to your neighborhood and pay the price of that neighborhood and this, they're not gonna do that. Big house, small house, okay? That will take some practice. But they need to understand, and you say, okay, you want 380? That's what 380 buys you when they sell. Can you compete with that? They're gonna be like, well, in their mind, they might, well, yeah, I put in a high efficiency furnace and I put in solar panels and I'm like, oh my goodness, okay. Let's start unpacking that. Alright, so there's the verbiage for that. Other pricing challenges. Here's one, we've done all this updating over the past year. That can be somewhat hard because you don't know this around the neighborhood, right? But is that automatically going to increase the value of their home? Why or why not?
It's just maintenance.
Okay. Yeah, somebody replacing an air conditioner that was dying is not necessarily gonna increase dollar for dollar what they spend. A buyer buying this house has every reason to believe they're gonna have a working air conditioner. Okay? You replacing all of your old windows because they were leaking like sieves, they were single pane with storms, and putting in some double pane, you're not gonna get a dollar for dollar return on that, let's be honest. They need to understand that. Really what you're doing is you can say, I appreciate that, right? I really do. It's really good that you've done this. It's definitely gonna add a lot of marketability to your home. It'll appeal to a lot of buyers, but in the buyer's eyes, it may just mean you've simply brought the home up to selling standards. They're like, oh, I repainted the whole exterior, like because it looked like crap. Like it needed it. Like it was literally starting to rot. If you had to paint it, you'd have a problem. So we need to make sure they understand that some of the stuff they're doing, a buyer is gonna expect that in any home they come to look for, so that's not automatic. Guess what? I spent $7,000 painting, I'm gonna get an extra 7,000 from that, doesn't work that way. Because we can look at the comps and dispel that belief. Alright, somebody mark where we're at. Page what?
We finished 15.
See, we jumped through like 3 pages right there. But I want you guys, a lot of those were things we'd already kind of covered, okay? And we've still got probably another 10 pages. Okay, so we'll get through it in the next class. Any questions about anything today? Has everybody at least walked away with one script that you're gonna be practicing or one idea? One person said yes, so the rest of you?
No, so my biggest thing is like when having a conversation with them, is just ending it with a question back to them. You know, letting them be the.
Make them verbalize
Right.
that, okay? Yes, that is very powerful. Anybody else?
I wanna see how I can not necessarily manipulate, but figure out the conversation too, because I believe that it's a hard objective anymore. Price high and then negotiate down, because it seems like that's not the most popular tactic anymore as a listing agent. Or any seller for that matter, because things just, trends are different or tactics are different, and I just wanna see how to put that together so I can handle that objection, because I've heard that one time, I can't.
Yeah. So is there a time where maybe that was effective, possibly, but it's not in the seller's market? It's really just not, okay? So they're probably hearing from family and all that, who sold the house 15 years ago, where they said, do this, or a car salesman, and we have to be able to combat that. Okay? And we do it with justifiable stats, data, etc. Okay? Okay, guys, thank you for being here. That's all for
Thank you.
today. My pleasure.